Howdy, folks. This is Dr. Matt Grieshop, Director of the Grimm Family Center for Organic Production and Research at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and you're joining us for Organic Chat. Introduce yourselves.
My name is Megan Widle. I am a first-year master's student at Cal Poly studying crop science. I'm working with the Organic Center to complete my research thesis, and my research is looking mostly at how nitrogen moves within different agricultural treatments.
Okay, great. And we have a second guest this week as well.
My name's Una O'Connell. I'm also getting my master's in agriculture, focused on crop science. Megan and I are working on similar projects, so it's the same field project, but I'm focusing more on the holistic side of things, so like insect measurements and weed measurements, yield, carbon.
Yeah, Una's looking at a lot of above ground, and
Yeah.
I'm looking at below ground stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's a
Basically,
distinction.
It's a complementary project. So how about, can you tell us a little bit about the larger project, sort of what it is, what the objectives are, sort of?
Yeah, sure. So our project kind of takes from industry. We're working closely with Braga Fresh, and we're doing kind of implementing a treatment that they have done where they're intercropping with sorghum grass and then also using clover in the furrows. That's one of the treatments.
Mm-hmm.
One of the treatments is a reduced tillage treatment, and then the other is what we're calling standard organic, which is just essentially what a lot of organic producers in the area do, which usually means higher tillage, as well as not using an intercropping species.
Right.
So I should clarify, two of our treatments are using the intercropping. One is on flat beds, and then one is on raised beds.
Mm-hmm.
Not raised. That's the wrong word.
Yeah, no, they're freeform beds, right?
Thank you.
What we call beds out here, but in a garden you might not call it a bed.
Thank you. That's what I was like. That sounds like a garden. That's wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is really an industry idea that we're testing here, and it's been great working with you all on it.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think the big piece of it for folks who don't know much about Central Coast vegetable production is, whether organic, conventional, there's a lot of tillage, as much tillage as you might expect times 3.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's sometimes 15 passes, 20 passes with a tractor doing various groundworking operations to make those beds, and then to get fertility into the beds, and then plant the plants, and then manage the plants afterwards. But a lot of it, probably 5 to 10 of those tractor passes with different implements, happen just for the bed establishment. So this project is, by having a crop that you're going to keep and then transplant around with a variety of brassica crops, and so cole crops, broccoli, cabbage, and lettuce, it means that you're not driving the tractor as much, which means you're not burning as much fuel, which means you're producing less greenhouse gas, and then hopefully you're having good impacts on the soil where you've got those cover crops in place. So yeah, and it's been exciting because it's our first time doing it, and
Yep.
a lot of learn by doing happen.
It's like Cal Poly way.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just kind of talk too much like I do in this
No,
podcast.
that's okay.
But is there other things you'd like to mention about
Sure.
Megan?
So my project, like the treatments that I described, it's basically honing in on how should I say this? So there's this thing called Ag Order 4 that was passed by the Central Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board, or the Water Board.
Mm-hmm.
And my research on this project is looking at essentially how reduced tillage and intercropping can impact nitrogen leaching within a soil profile.
Mm-hmm.
Because Ag Order 4, it has, what's the word I'm trying to think of? It regulates how the amount of nitrates that exist within an agricultural system, by measuring what's in the harvest, what's in the biomass, and then looking at how much you applied. Right. So there are a lot of assumptions made with that policy. And I think the crux of my portion of this project is looking at how these treatments that we're implementing can impact nitrogen dynamics in ways that maybe aren't considered in that policy.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great summation of it. And for the listeners, the issue is that nitrate is an environmental pollutant. It's an important form of nitrogen for agriculture. It's one of the two forms of nitrogen that plants readily take up. But in high concentrations in our drinking water, it can lead to all kinds of long-term health issues, cancers, among other things. It also can lead to blue baby syndrome. And so there's a high level of nitrate in a lot of farming communities' water because of all the nitrogen fertilizers that get put on. But in organic ag, we basically don't put straight nitrate on things. We put organic fertilizers that are made up of proteins and amino acids that get broken down into that. Mm-hmm. We also tend to use cover crops and things that really change the soil dynamics. So the regulations that have been written really don't take any of that into account, which is, as Megan was saying. And so we're hoping that this research will help provide some insights into, hey, maybe it's not just as simple as how much nitrogen you put on the field, it's the form of the nitrogen.
Right.
And it's how you treat it once it's there.
Yeah.
Versus right now it's pretty much just nitrogen bad.
Right. I think it's assumed that any nitrogen not measured in the harvestable biomass is lost through leaching, which doesn't take into account other loss pathways, like denitrification. And the big one for organics is immobilization into soil organic matter, which is a major goal of organic agriculture, is to build up soil organic matter. So without looking at that portion of where that nitrogen could be going, I keep personifying nitrogen, but where it's going.
Big N.
Yes. So there are other loss pathways, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
But I think what you just talked about, especially in terms of the formation of organic matter, because that actually has a lot of climate smart sort of potential as well, right? Because organic matter is the sort of initial way that we think we're going to fix carbon out of the atmosphere into the soil. But you need life to do that, and life needs nitrogen. And that's, again, I think that's one of those sort of big questions about these policies. It's sort of like, okay, well, we're not going to put we're not going to measure nitrogen in a way that takes into account this other goal, which is to try to build more carbon into our soils, in part for climate smart practices. But I mean, from my personal perspective, it's really about water holding capacity, nutrient holding capacity, and just better plant health in general. So maybe Una, do you want to talk about a little more about your project? So
I'll be comparing the 4 treatments we have and how they affect a few different things. One of them being weed density, another being just like insect density, I guess. And then I have a few soil tests as well, so like soil organic matter, a few different carbon tests. And we are thinking that the regenerative, I guess you'd call it regenerative. So
that's what we call it.
The integrated cover crops and the reduced tillage is going to positively affect the soil, make it healthier, and then hopefully have less weed density, less insect pest density, and we're also going to be comparing the yield. So we'll see how it does with that too.
And I think that's I think that part of the project's so important because it's sort of all the things that our organic partners, our grower partners really care about, right? Because ultimately you have to be able to make money. And you need to know, I mean, weeding is such a major endeavor in any organic operation. Keeping track of that's so important. Super costly. So that, I think it's a really important part of the project. And one of the fun things about the project is how integrated it's become. So it's going to be really interesting to see what we find. In our first go-around, the rains have made it interesting getting the plants in the ground.
And soil sampling. Megan and I had lots of trouble soil sampling.
Oh my God.
Actually, so Una, will you tell us, how are you tracking? So I know you're tracking like activities like weed management and things like that. So what's the MadCap scheme for doing that?
So Matt and I, and Kelly, the farm manager, came up with an idea of using QR codes to, basically these QR codes are linked to Google Forms. Each treatment and each block has its own separate QR code. And so we're having students scan these QR codes out in the field. We installed them so there's one QR code per treatment per block.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just an easy way to keep track of how long each activity, so like weeding or fertilizer application or whatever it is they're doing, is taking.
Right.
So we'll be able to, at the end of this, for example, compare how long it took to weed the regenerative treatment compared to the standard organic.
Right.
So that'll be useful information too.
If we can get the students to use them.
So far they haven't.
Yeah.
Wait, they haven't or have?
Have not.
Okay.
Yeah. So we need
Although, I put them in right before spring break.
Yeah.
And then everyone
yeah.
left.
Yeah.
So
it's the getting
I
things
think they'll
started.
use them.
And then of course wind has done fun things for us too.
yeah, we had lots of wind blow off the QR codes from the stakes they were stapled onto.
Yeah.
But we fixed those today.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's just put a lot more staples in them.
Yeah.
Hoping that works.
Yeah, if 2 doesn't work, then maybe 20 will.
Yeah.
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 So.
I think I bought like 2,000 or 3,000 staples, so you should be pretty
We'll be
good for
good.
at
Oh yeah,
least
we
one
have
turn.
plenty. Yeah.
And there's plenty more where those came from.
Yeah. So hopefully
Yeah.
that works.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of trial and error for
Yep.
everything, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not just the QR codes, but like soil sampling. We have our auger, our mechanical
Oh, yeah.
auger.
Yeah.
Love
Learned
that
how to
thing.
use that together.
So why is that important? So why are you using a mechanical? Why not just use a regular soil
It's
probe?
too hard.
I have done both.
Okay.
I've done with, it's like a gas powered thing. So
Mhm.
it's essentially a post pounder that pounds the
Mm-hmm.
core into the soil. It's a lot easier
Mhm.
this way, which is nice. And we are sampling deeper than I think most people sample. We're
Okay.
sampling down to 100 centimeters, and that is for my project. So sorry, Una.
Yeah, I wouldn't have to go.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to.
So
Anyway,
you're
we
taking
can get on that.
from the topsoil. You're taking a sample, and then you're taking a sample about a yard down.
Yeah, just
Well,
because of the
yes.
nitrogen.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're separating those 100 centimeters into 4 subsamples
Oh, okay.
and measuring different qualities. So Una will be measuring pH and aggregate stability is
That's
an
the
important
one that you were
one.
gonna say.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
We have to sieve really
Yeah.
carefully because of the aggregate stability.
It takes a long time.
It takes a long
Just
time.
Fingers.
Megan wouldn't have to do that.
It's okay. This is the beauty of doing 2 projects at once. There are
Yeah.
a lot of extra things you don't think about
Yeah.
but you get to help each other too. So it's really
Yeah.
nice.
No, it's better that way than.
It is better. Yeah.
But you're getting to work with some undergrads too, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
We just hired a couple of assistants.
Mhm.
One of which who works at the organic farm and I think was on the podcast. Rowan. Yeah.
Rowan Garcia.
So Rowan, yeah.
Shout out to Rowan.
And then Elizabeth.
And then Elizabeth
And
Juarez
Jacob.
and Jacob
Jacob.
Silva.
Yeah.
I believe. Yes.
Yeah.
They'll be helping us out. So we're starting actually on Friday. We'll
Friday.
be sampling with them for the first time.
Pulling soil.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that'll be really fun.
I'm putting the yellow sticky cards out for.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Mhm.
For the insects.
That's great.
Yeah, that's the fun
Mhm.
stuff.
Yeah.
That's what's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. So that's a lot about this project. But maybe I'll ask you some questions about some more general stuff. So you both can chime in as needed. So don't feel like it's each of you has to answer everything separately. But what are 3 things that you all think about when you think organic agriculture?
Mhm. Well, what I think of mostly is a potentially more sustainable way of producing food into the future. I think everyone listening to this podcast probably knows that organics don't deal with synthetic inputs for the most part. There are certain things you can apply that are organic certified, but a lot of it is, I think the true soul of organics was to find a better way to produce food that better reflects ecosystem processes around the agricultural setting. So that's something I think of as just more sustainability. And obviously there are a bunch of ways to do organic, just as there are a bunch of ways to do conventional. So that could mean a bunch of different things. But
Yeah.
that's what I think of mostly.
It's funny you say that. I mean, in my experiences with organic production, the interesting thing is that there is a codified set of rules and regulations around organic, so it has a definition. Conventional really doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be no-till, lots of till, something in the middle, who
Right.
knows, right? But with organics, like from field to field and farm to farm, the variation is massive, because every piece of ground is different. It's going through a different set of processes. It has a different surrounding landscape.
Totally.
That's going to either, promote things you don't particularly want or things that you do want in your system. And it's really interesting to hear you reflect on that, because that's definitely what I see. And in some ways, it's weird to me that in organics we have this very rigid codified set of laws, because ultimately you've got this real need to be able to flex and adapt and change. But also, I mean, without the most prohibition of synthetics, it would be a very different thing.
Definitely.
Maybe it'd be something else.
Yeah.
But sorry, I just got talking.
No, that's okay.
But, yeah. How about you? What's something that you think about when you think about organics?
Probably just the cost of registration.
So you're very much an organic farmer, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's like $5,000.
Is it really?
You can't, yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh my.
It depends.
Which is not easy for like smaller
No.
farmers. And then they can't sell at certain farmers markets because they're not certified organic. And but it's not because they're not doing those practices and the regulations. Like they are. They just can't afford the $5,000 fee.
Yeah.
So.
And it's a lot of paperwork. I mean,
A
beyond
lot of
just
paperwork.
the money, you got to keep track of everything. And keep it organized. And it's we're recording this around tax time, and it's imagine like trying to do itemized deductions but like times 20.
Yeah, a lot of time, a lot of paperwork, a lot of money.
Yeah. I know that's something that our partners at CCOF are really cognizant of. They've been running a lot of grant programs for young and beginning farmers, especially from underserved communities, where they'll give them like a $10,000 grant during the transition period. And there was a time where I think there was a cost share of about, I think it was up to $3,000 from the federal government. And right now I think it's at $500. It got cut back in the 2000s a bit. And there's a push to try to return that, especially for the smaller farmers, because I mean, if you're a massive enterprise and you're growing on 10,000 acres, $5,000, which it would actually be more than 5,000 for them. It's not a big deal, but if you're growing on 5 or 10 acres, it might be it's a real problem. That's an interesting take on organics and what you think about, but probably living with somebody who's dealing with certification paperwork would maybe help that. Yeah. How about anything else you think about with organics?
I had ideas.
I think overall it's just like a good direction for like practice wise.
Yeah, I'm interested. That's something I was going to say is I think there's a lot of opportunity to learn more about organics, because I think we've had a long time to get really good at conventional production and creating these quite sterile environments. But I think as organics are becoming more and more popular, there's so many questions, especially with like weed management and pest management. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity for research like ours to help to answer some of those questions. That's
great. So that's actually a great segue to the next question. So would you all share 3 or so things that you've learned while working on this project at the Cal Poly Organic Farm? They can be good things. They can be bad things. They can be, well,
it's
I don't
all
think
good
things bad, but painful maybe, or hard learned versus soft learned.
We've learned patience.
We've learned patience. Very much.
Well, you're ahead of me on that one.
Yeah, we're learning patience.
Yeah.
Una seems to have it down better than myself.
And practicing.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. It's not that bad.
There's like a lot of paperwork that I didn't expect coming into a grad program. Just a lot of bureaucratic stuff to deal with that was kind of unexpected. So that's been a learning experience.
Universities like their paperwork.
Universities, but for the most part, I've learned way more than I ever thought I would know about nutrient management,
Cool.
especially in organics. I'm
Yeah.
still learning a bunch, but I mean, anyone who's ever done a research thesis knows it's a lot of reading, and so
Yeah.
a lot of reading on papers about organic nutrient management, which has been really interesting. And
Mhm.
I, for one, I didn't know before joining this program the differences in the types of nutrients that are applied in those two systems, and also how they're mineralized in the soil is
Mhm.
really the big key. I think is the timing of it all seems really difficult, and it makes sense to me why a lot of that's a big problem in a lot of organic growing systems, is getting that timing
Mhm.
where your plant wants the nutrients and is able to take up the nutrients, but the microbes in the soil have actually had a chance to eat it up and mineralize it for the plant.
Right.
That's
Eat
been
it
a
up and
big
poop it
part.
out.
Yes, thank you. That's what I was
Yeah.
looking for.
Yeah.
That's been a big learning thing for me, and I'm still learning more about it. But
Yeah, I think we all are.
Yeah.
We will be for a long time.
It seems to be a kind of emerging question.
And it's a big black box.
Yeah.
We don't. That's been some of the early research that Dr. DeCock has been really fortunate working with her, with the center, on, is sort of just asking all kinds of questions about, okay, well, what are the different things that affect this? And the scary answer is that lots of things,
Yeah.
and it changes from point to point. So
Right, each
that's
system.
not scary, maybe. Scary is a bad word for that.
Yeah.
It's this overwhelming answer, might be. So figuring out how to get to that, predictability point, and I don't know. Maybe I've been in the organic industry too long, but for me, so much of it really comes back to building soil organic matter. It just seems like that seems to be a fairly consistent. It's not perfectly consistent, but it's fairly consistent that if you build organic matter, a lot of stuff starts to happen more smoothly. Again, water holding capacity, nutrient mineralization, but it's at the same time, it's not a guarantee.
Right. And I think you brought up a good point. At least to me, it seems like in conventional systems, it's a lot easier to be consistent in your results, because you are creating this sterile environment where these inputs, 1, 2, 3, are needed. Whereas organics, it's so much more reliant on the system that you're in, it seems like, anyway. But so many more questions are at play when you're working with your actual soil instead of just dumping already mineralized nitrogen and all these things into your system. It's very different. Yeah, exactly. More predictable.
Yeah. How about you, Una? What have you learned in this experience so far?
I've learned a lot of project planning and field work management. I think from the start we kind of started at the same time with the field work, just getting the beds listed and everything with Kelly. Planting, making sure everything is happening and moving. And then even just down to the other day when we were talking about how we're going to get the yellow sticky cards in there.
And not have them blow away?
Yeah, not have them blow away. And I feel like, talking with you and talking with Kelly, talking with multiple people has helped. And just designing just the little things that you don't think about as much.
Yeah.
I think I've learned a lot from that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think I've ever managed a research project where it's gone the way we thought it would initially. There's always twists and turns, and I mean that in over 30 years. There's maybe been a handful of projects where things went pretty much the way we thought they would. But just for example, the QR code thing just seems like, oh, this is a great, elegant solution. And then it's like, oh, but they blow off and we can't keep them in place. So I guess we have to go back to the drawing board.
Even making the quadrats.
Yeah.
The
for
PVC
weed.
pipes. And for the weed data collection. And I think my side of the project has a lot of little things.
Yeah.
And a lot of little devices that we've had to make and make sure they work. And
actually,
mine's gonna have some soon.
Yours will.
How are you quantifying the weeds in the field?
We made Megan helped me actually.
Did I?
Yeah, making the quadrat.
Oh yeah.
So which is just a square, right?
Yeah, which is just a 50 centimeter by 50 centimeter square. And then taking that out into the field and laying it on the ground and yeah, so we're right now just taking photos on an iPhone, which has a setting that this is another thing we found out, learned by doing. There's a setting in the iPhone where you get this grid and a level cross in the middle of it, so we can get level photos, and then taking those photos and quantifying the surface area covered using ImageJ, which is just like a system that you can set a scale and then
free software that scientists love.
Yeah, either use shading or trace the weeds, and it'll tell you how the centimeters squared covered in the weeds. So, but yeah, just kind of getting started with that. Took the first round of photos today.
Yeah, that's great.
Good stuff.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe as our last discussion question, and again, you both can just jump in. What advancement or trend in organic ag excites you the most, and how do you see it shaping the future of our agricultural systems, sort of in a larger sense?
I think we were both saying the same thing.
Yeah, I think we were.
Yeah, just like we like how farmers are focusing. I mean, not all farmers, but there's a pathway towards farmers thinking about soil health more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So.
it seems like when organics was kind of founded, that was at the forefront of
Absolutely
what it was about. And obviously now that's more of a pillar taken up by like the regenerative movement. And it's fitting, both two of our treatments have the word regenerative in them. But that I think is, the biggest thing that you could focus on is soil health. That it makes sense that's like we're coming back to that. It seems like in so many of our systems, that's something that we're coming back to is like, how did old like traditional farming happen? And that was like their main focus was soil. So it's just coming back to that, and that excites me because I think a lot of good can come from that. And if we focus on soil health, we can improve our inputs and
long-term food security.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a great point. So same from you and
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
we talked about this
we
before.
talked
about this.
We had the same answer.
Yeah.
All right.
It's also it's exciting that organics are becoming more mainstream.
Yeah, consumers want organic.
Yeah, very much. So that's exciting all around. Just that that's becoming a more studied area. I feel like if more people are doing it and in different environments, we can only get better at it with all the trial and error. So I hope that it'll only get better. I know now that like organics in research has shown to maybe use a little bit more land than conventional to produce the same yields. So maybe with more practice at it, we could improve those numbers and get closer to what conventional can produce.
With that data, I mean, for me, I'm pretty obsessed about energy systems, which is weird maybe for an entomologist. But I look at that data, and for me, it's always kind of a land area equivalency that needs to take into account the amount of fossil fuel energy subsidy that went into the system. And that's not to say that organics are necessarily really friendly on that front, because there is a lot of tractor work and other things that happen. But, we can vastly increase the productivity of a given chunk of real estate by dumping a lot of nitrate and ammonia on it, and phosphorus and other things. But those things have a definite cost. I mean, the nitrogen fixation is I can't give the exact percentage, but is a major contributor to natural gas use, which translates to a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. So, so if you can move away from that, then maybe it's not just about the land area, I guess is where I'm going, but it's about the energy balance of how much energy is going into the system and then how much edible energy is coming out of it.
Yeah, that's a great point.
But that's been something I've obsessed on since I was 20. So
Yeah, it's just exciting to see like major companies in the ag space start to champion organics as something that they're involved in and approve of and are excited about. And like I feel like it's taken a little bit of time. Like most of my organic experience comes from like really small scale like nonprofit farms that do organics or regenerative or both. And yeah, it's cool to see them kind of become larger and larger and more in the mainstream is all.
Yeah, that's great. Well, fantastic. Any final thoughts or words?
I don't think so.
No,
Thank
I
you
don't think
for all. Yeah,
Oh,
thanks
thank you
for
all
this.
for coming
Thank you,
and
Mary.
being on
Thank you,
the
Matt.
podcast. I mean, you didn't really have entirely a choice in
No.
it. It's like, oh, hey, this is what this is on your
Not
to-do list this
really.
week, but it's really appreciated, and
Yeah.
it's really fun to talk about this stuff, and
Mhm.
maybe we'll do another one.
Yeah.
When we have
Yeah,
data.
once we're
When we have data.
once we have data, that'd be
Exactly.
cool. Yeah.
And we're not just at the beginning.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That'd be
All right.
fun.
All right, well, be well. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for listening to Organic Chat. This podcast is recorded on the Cal Poly campus. Production provided by our production engineer, Mary Nascimento.